I graduated from college, I got an internship to work with an interfaith organization that supported workers' rights by partnering with labor unions. It was a political strategy of the labor movement to connect with clergy around justice issues, in the long tradition of folks like Dr. King and Cesar Chavez and Dorothy Day, and before them, the prophets of Israel, to advocate for people who do hard work and aren't paid or treated fairly. My job was to convene the clergy and get them talking about issues in our city in their congregations, as well as to invite them to show up at rallies and demonstrations in their clerical getup and say prayers and give little talks. The summer internship turned into a permanent job, and I held it for a year until I started seminary. I learned a lot, and I believed in what I was doing. But as the labor leaders worked with local council people to get things done, I also saw how the sausage got made. I learned at the ripe old age of 22 that people whose politics are aligned with my moral beliefs don't always act morally. It's the classic ethical debate. Does the end justify the means? And I've been thinking about it as a lot as our governor pushes to pass redistricting in California to keep up with the political maneuvering of legislators in other states. I heard Newsom interviewed last week, advocating for a stronger and more muscular Democratic brand because Americans, and here he was quoting Bill Clinton, will always choose strong and wrong over right and weak. That may be true, but it is not the Christian choice, because the logic of the cross is the exact opposite. Right might look weak, but in the end, it's always stronger. The problem is, the end never feels like it's coming fast enough. In today's gospel, Jesus warns a crowd of enthusiastic, prospective followers that before they begin the journey of discipleship, they should sit down and ask themselves what it might cost them. Will their family reject them? Will they lose their livelihood? Will they be branded as traitors to Rome and end up crucified on a cross, as thousands of people were under the reign of that cruel empire? Are they willing to pay those costs? Because if not, they shouldn't even start on the journey. The word cost only appears in the New Testament this one time, here in today's gospel reading. And it's worth it to pause and define the word. Cost is what we give up to acquire or accomplish, to maintain or produce something. It involves a measure of sacrifice and perhaps loss, or a penalty in order to gain something else. What do we gain when we choose discipleship? When Jesus says that those who are unwilling to make the sacrifices cannot be his disciples, he isn't rejecting them as inadequate or unfaithful. He's saying it just won't work because they don't yet understand what is gained by picking up the cross. All humans naturally want to avoid suffering. It's hard to understand the counterintuitive logic of the cross, that the path to the redemption of the world and our own spiritual growth leads straight through suffering. We must face it head on. It's tempting to believe we can avoid it. We can take the long route around. But in the end, we can't get there without facing suffering. I've been reading a book that I think of as a spiritual classic, although it's not that old. It's called The Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. The book shows how in spiritual practice, Christianity and Buddhism have so much in common. And it's really just these two, by the time they write this, they're in their 80s, two really wise guys having a fun time, hanging out and laughing with each other. It's a great read. And there is a chapter of the book about suffering. They're laughing through the whole thing, the chapter on suffering. Desmond Tutu talks about the struggle against apartheid in South Africa, and the Dalai Lama talks about the Chinese occupation of Tibet. And I'm going to share a passage with you from it, and it begins with the Dalai Lama speaking. He says, "When we came to India as refugees in 1959, we had a lot of difficulties, a lot of problems. But when you carry out the work, and the more difficulties you encounter, then when you see results, the greater the joy, isn't it?" "Yes," agreed the Archbishop. The Dalai Lama continued, "You see, if there are no difficulties and you are always relaxed, then you complain more." He was laughing at the irony that we could experience more joy in the face of great adversity than when life is seemingly easy and uneventful. And the Archbishop was laughing too. Joy, it seemed, was a strange alchemy of mind over matter. The path to joy, like with sadness, did not lead away from suffering and adversity, but through it. The Archbishop said, "Nothing beautiful comes without suffering." This is the paradox of the cross. We don't want to suffer, and God does not want us to suffer. That's really important. And yet, suffering is a part of life. And we've all experienced the truth of what these two spiritual icons are saying in some way or another. We grow from suffering. From it, we learn gratitude, resilience, and compassion. We learn how to find joy, even in moments of loss and fear. We find the courage to do what is right, even when we are angry and afraid. The Dalai Lama tells the story of a friend of his who was captured by the Chinese and tortured and imprisoned for 18 years. Of the 130 people arrested, only 20 survived that time. The Lama speaks of his friend saying, quotes his friend who said, "During those years, he faced some real dangers." And I thought, the Dalai Lama thought, of course, he was talking about dangers to his life. But he told me he was in danger of losing his compassion for his Chinese guards. That was the danger he felt. Suffering is the cost, and what is gained is peace and joy. What we Christians call the kingdom of God, always present inside of us, and always the goal of our actions in the world. Suffering is the word used in Buddhism, and it sounds really daunting. And the cross, taking up the cross, also sounds really daunting. The challenge/invitation in the gospel reading today is not very inviting. But these big words like suffering and cross also encompass our everyday challenges, our growth opportunities that are those moments that just feel hard and uncomfortable, but if we face them instead of going around, we have the opportunity to grow. If we choose to pick up the cross and bravely face the reality of our lives and our world, the joy, the good, the blessings, the abundance, and also the suffering, the fear, the anger, the loss, we do not face it alone. Jeremiah who I think Nina is tired of at this point in the summer. Jeremiah reminds us that God is forming us like a potter shapes clay. And God will keep trying until we cooperate, willingly taking on the shape of love and justice and mercy that God created us to have. And we also have the guidance and support of the community of others who have chosen the way of the cross, as Philemon has the support when Paul writes him this challenging letter about showing mercy to his slave Onesimus, which Paul asks Philemon to have read in front of the whole community, right? It's not a private letter. It's read this in front of everybody, Philemon letter. Paul offers to pay Onesimus' debt, modeling God's just mercy as a better option than the right of punishment that Philemon could enforce. And Paul offers it in front of everyone so that the community can help Philemon make the choice to follow Christ's example of nonviolent, sacrificial love. In our spiritual lives, as we draw closer to God and in our fellowship with one another, we are formed more and more into the kind of courageously peaceful and loving people we are called to be. It becomes easier and easier to face the hard choices, to step into the suffering, be it epic or ordinary, and to respond non-defensively rather than with physical or spiritual violence. Because we know the kingdom of God, a fountain of eternal joy, is always within us. We are here, all of us this morning, because we've chosen to partner with God for help in becoming good vessels, strong enough to be disciples whose hearts are transformed by our suffering, so that through our lives and our actions, we can reveal the paradoxical logic of the cross. In the end, what is right, what is peaceful, just, and compassionate, though it may look weak, is always, always the strongest. In the end, love will win.